I'm Richard Crowsdale, and I'm here with Vice President of the Law Society of Scotland, Bruce Beveridge, to discuss the role of in-house lawyers. So, Bruce, tell me, why are in-house lawyers so important?
Well, in most organisations, the legal team, whether it's large or small, is an essential strand of the organisation's DNA. They are a key component in keeping the organisation on the road and on track. They give absolutely critical advice on risk management, on governance, on compliance, as well as on the myriad of commercial matters which are central to the organisation's operation. There are various ways of trying to create a picture of why they're important. One I particularly like, which came from Paul Gilbert, who's one of the sort of thought leaders and commentators in in-house generally. It relayed a conversation between a fairly well-known general counsel in a large organisation and their chief executive. And the general counsel was trying to elicit from the chief executive what value they saw in the in-house team. And the answer was that he very much regarded the in-house team as the brakes, the organisation's braking system. This was somewhat dismaying to the general counsel, who was looking for something rather more lively than a braking system. He was looking for maybe the engine, an accelerator, or something like that. So he asked for an explanation. The chief executive explained that as far as he was concerned, the organisation was a racing car, and he wanted to drive it as fast as he possibly could around all the streets and roads without it coming off the road. He saw that the legal team was the braking system. It was the system which would apply the brakes only when it was necessary and only as hard as was necessary just to keep the car on the road. And that, for me, I think was quite an illustrative example of just what function a legal team does in most organisations, regardless of what they're there to do. In terms of the value that a legal team brings, one thing it is not is their legal skills. In most cases, the legal ability of the in-house lawyers is taken as a given by the organisation. What they're really after is the added value. It's the leveraging of that unique position of knowledge and understanding of the organisation and the people in it, which helps them to deploy advice that really is taking the organisation as far and as fast as it can go without getting unstuck. Let me give you one further analogy. It was a sales conference, again from Paul Gilbert. The sales director was launching a new power tool. It was a new drill, and the entire sales force was gathered together, and to a great fanfare, a slide went up, a picture of this new drill, and the sales director got his sales force really wound up. Is this what our customers want? Yeah, I can't hear you. Is this what our customers want? And he had them whooping, he had them standing on their chairs and whooping about it. They were so wound up. And then he put another slide up, which was a piece of wood with a hole in it. And he said, no, that's what our customers want. And I think for me, a legal team is not a drill. A legal team is the way in which an organisation is helped to get the right hole in the right piece of wood. It doesn't have to be the very best hole. It doesn't have to be measured with a micrometer. It has to be a hole that the organisation needs. And that for me is another example which just defines the value that a legal team brings.
Okay, and is in-house law an interesting career?
Oh goodness, yes. It's the most phenomenally rewarding and dynamic career. The protection of an organisation is critical. It's the first thing that a chief executive and a board need, and shareholders need. But that's just part and parcel of the whole panoply of what a legal team does, regardless of the organisation. My background's in-house background anyways, in Scottish Government and UK Government, and I've had the opportunity of doing a wide range of things there. But in-house teams, in addition to the governance and compliance, the risk, the commerciality of what a lot of organisations do, including public sector, is really key. And you're faced with often teams who are trying to launch a new product or a new fund. They want your advice immediately on the spot as to whether or not they can send this contract out there and then. So you need to be able to assess an organisation, assess the risk, and decide whether that contract is adequate. Not whether it's the best, most finely crafted legal documentation, but whether the legal clauses in it are adequate for that organisation, for that contract. That goes back to what I said earlier about this unique position of understanding of the organisation, what it's trying to do, the territory it operates from, the people within it. And that's a very challenging and demanding environment, and one's exceptionally fast pace. And that's the same for government, for policy that's being made, for ministers reacting to things, just in the way that your sales force want an answer there and then on the contract they're going to be sending out.
And what kind of careers are there in-house for people just coming into the profession?
Well, in Scotland there's a very wide range of in-house career opportunity. The public sector is extensive. I mentioned that I've worked in the Scottish and UK government. In the Scottish government there's itself a very, very broad range of career options, whether that's in a central office giving core advice, or whether it's spread around any one of large number of departments and associated organisations. There's the Crown and Procurator Fiscal Service, which obviously has a large legal contingent prosecuting and advising the prosecution of offences around Scotland. The local government estate in Scotland, every authority has its own legal team. Again, a very dynamic environment with a lot of change. And the private sector is really a myriad of opportunity. The financial sector in Scotland is still very strong. The oil and gas sector is booming, and some of the opportunities that come from these areas are national or international. There's obviously financial services operates not just around the UK but also internationally. The Law Society of Scotland has got any number of in-house lawyers who operate in London and much, much further afield, Hong Kong, Australia, so forth. There's also quite a thriving SME sector in Scotland. The creative sector, there is still an amount of engineering work. The drinks industry, of course, very close to my heart, the Scotch Whisky Association, really provides a wealth of opportunity. Renewable energy is obviously one of the hot areas just now, and that too has a need for both in-house and private practice expertise. So it's really a very broad canvas with quite a number of national and international arrangements.
So it sounds like the in-house sector is really booming at the moment.
Well, it's thriving. It's absolutely thriving. In terms of the proportion of the profession, it remains around 28% or so. It hasn't changed drastically, but it's very active indeed. I mean, some of the sectors I mentioned, financial services, renewable energy, drinks industry, oil and gas, really are booming in terms of the in-house market. The interest has shifted. I mentioned some of the core protection areas, if you like, the risk, the governance, the compliance, these sort of supporting arrangements, is perhaps slightly more focus on some of these areas, especially in the likes of financial services. But the oil and gas sector, that international exploration, the sheer scale of opportunities, of focuses that throws up for in-house teams is absolutely fascinating.
And could you give us some idea of the makeup of the in-house sector?
Well, it's pretty broad. If you take the sort of sectoral territory I was discussing a moment ago, you can start your career in just about any part of that. You can actually do a traineeship in-house. Around 10% of traineeships are within organisations rather than within private practice. Government certainly does them, local government does them. And so does industry across the piece. The opportunities grow once you're qualified. And one of the interesting things I think is that until you've been in an organisation, it can be quite difficult getting a really clear picture of what it is like working there, because it is in many ways quite a different role. Secondment opportunities certainly exist within the larger commercial firms who have established tendered arrangements with in-house providers, and that's a really good way of getting an insight into what it's like working in an organisation. Indeed, I've got friends who over time have worked in some far-flung places whilst on secondment in the financial services, oil and gas sectors, and so on. And indeed, from within government, the government sector has occasionally the need to second legal advisors into some remarkable places, including the likes of Iraq. So it's a pretty broad church. 1 to 5 years post-qualified, there is certainly a demand for the utilisation of some of the experience you've gained in a private organisation, and the likes of banking teams. somebody I've been working with in another organisation on maternity cover has just gone to one of the financial services banking teams. It's about 4 years post-qualified. So that's a very interesting area. I think a lot more people are looking far more actively at the in-house sector now as a means of expanding their career. It's certainly not an easy option. I think in times gone by, some people have viewed it as being a little bit of a soft option rather than work in private practice, but that's most certainly not the case, I can tell you from personal experience. It's enormously rewarding, and the opportunities are really very broad throughout your career, but it's certainly not an easy option.
Now, I know the Inhouse Lawyers annual conference is coming up later this month. Perhaps you could tell us a bit about that.
Yes, it's going to be an excellent event actually. It's their annual conference, and this year I think the programme is focused more on soft skills rather than black letter law, which I'm delighted about. I think it's the area that helps legal teams deliver the value within an organisation. As I said, the organisations take the legal ability of their in-house lawyers for granted and just assume it, and rightly so. The incremental value is how do you work within that organisation, and a lot of what the conference is going to cover drives straight at that, whether it's risk, governance, compliance, or effectively how to do the job.
And I understand you're speaking at the conference yourself. What are you going to be talking to delegates about?
I think one of the things I'll be drawing out is some of the challenges that are facing the profession as a whole. The threats to legal aid, court closures, access to justice, economic challenges facing the profession, private practice in particular, but most certainly the in-house community as well. Just to make sure that we're all aware of the bigger picture of what the threats are today and how those will reflect in the future. After all, we are all Scottish solicitors and we're all wrapped up in the same ethical compass, the standards that we operate under and the services that we seek to provide. So I think that's certainly going to form part of it. And I'll also be looking to the future. What does the future hold for the in-house sector, for the Inhouse Lawyers group running this conference? I think we're at a time of quite significant change, and I think it's a very exciting, very interesting and potentially challenging journey. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time in helping delegates explore that.